Hell is filled with people like you.
It's time to jump into DraftKings. Go to DraftKings today at DraftKings.com. Golf, NASCAR, soccer, you name it. And of course, Major League Baseball, basketball, hockey, and football. Go to DraftKings.com. Listen to the Armchair Quarterbacks for DFS advice all year round.
This is Sean O'Toole with the Armchair Quarterbacks. Catch me drive time with Mac McGee, the Armchair Quarterbacks radio show and Facebook Live.
Big news and the big games covered in the Big Ten by the Armchair Quarterbacks all year long.
Third down and about 22. As Smith drops the throw, he's got his tight end open, but he's got Carter downfield, and he's gone. Michigan leads the game with a first touchdown on a bullet, a bomb to Carter, 71 yards.
Now State's lead 7-3. There he goes. So long. Ohio State touchdown.
That's that old 1-2 punch. You fake to him the first time and then have it the second time.
In his career, Lorenzo White 15 times rushed for 100 yards in a half. 5 of those this season. On 2nd and 10.
Long throw to Ryson, and he's open all the way to the 6-yard line.
Big Ten football covered in the Southeast by the Armchair Quarterbacks. Weekends in the fall just got a hell of a lot better. Saturday mornings, it's Dixie Football Nation, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We talk SEC, ACC, the Big Ten, and more. As the only true Southern football kickoff show, you don't want to miss it. 8 to 9 Eastern Saturdays. The Armchair Quarterbacks have got you covered all football season long. Here in St. Augustine,
I was your age, they would say we could become cops or criminals. Today, what I'm saying is this. When you're facing a loaded gun, it's different.
We have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, and flat out deceived.
There's something kind of about a kid that's never played baseball.
But what the hell, boy?
Make sure to listen to the Armchair Quarterbacks. Good enough for us down here in the bayou. Go Tigers and the Armchair Quarterbacks.
It's morning. Yes. And what a lovely morning.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be honest, what's a sentence that absolutely killed you inside, but you pretended like it didn't?
Sir, can you please pull ahead? We're waiting on your chicken nuggets.
Armchair.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're listening to the Armchair Quarterbacks on CBS Sports Radio, #1 sports station.
Good morning, and this is your Armchair Quarterbacks Sports Flash.
Let me be the first to stand up and say that I want to express my sincere apologies to the Asian community and the Asian American community. I am a black man. I religiously go off about minorities being marginalized in this nation. I instantly go off, repeatedly bring up the fact that if you are a member of a community that feels disenfranchised in any way, that's something that we need to battle, that we need to fend off to the best of our ability as a nation. These are the kind of things that I bring up. And the reason why I bring up my blackness is because of this. On many occasions, what I have said, when people have said something that is offensive in any way to the minority community, it's not about how you feel. It's about how they feel. For a lot of people out there going off about Disney and ESPN, no, this was me. Wasn't Max, wasn't Molly, wasn't the producers on First Take, wasn't the bosses, it was me. I said it. And the reality is that I was completely clueless as to the kind of impact that this would have on the Asian and the Asian American community.
That was Stephen A. Smith apologizing and playing the victim, all in the same sentence. Classic ESPN. Later in the segment, Jeff Passon joined the crew and said all the right things that you would want to say in a disaster of a PR stunt that went down yesterday for ESPN's First Take, where Stephen A. Smith suggested that Shohei Ohtani, who has an interpreter, was bad for baseball because one of their top stars did not know the English language. Nothing was addressed, by the way, about the fact that the ESPN First Take producers and directors had that topic at hand for the show Monday morning. It appears nothing will be done as Rachel Nichols continues to be suspended by ESPN for the leaked audio last week. So the Los Angeles Angels made a very strange draft history this week. They made 20 draft picks in the 20-round draft process and selected all 20 pitchers. The only other team to select all pitchers in a draft was the Miami Marlins a year ago, but that was a shortened 5-round draft due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Miami U's right-hander Sam Bachman was the Angels' first-round pick, one of 19 college pitchers they selected this week. The only high school selection was 12th-round pick Mason Albright from IMG Academy in Florida. That's one way to rebuild a pitching staff. Draft 20 guys that are ready to hit the majors if everything goes right in the next year or two. Banning the shift, eliminating 7-inning doubleheaders, and playing extra innings without a runner starting on second base are all on the table as Major League Baseball continues its post-COVID return to normalcy while negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement with the Players Association this offseason. Quote, when we adopted 7-inning doubleheaders for this year, we didn't know the country was going to look like it does now. We were scared it was going to look very, very different. It was a COVID-related change. I don't think 7-inning doubleheaders are going to be a part of our future going forward. Let's just say you regulated the shift by requiring 2 infielders on each side of second base. What does that do? It makes the game look like it did when I was 12 years old. It's not change, it's kind of restoration. That's why people are in favor of it. Those were his comments when being asked about banning the shift. It's to be noted, all of this could be just positioning as they hit the CBA expiration at the end of the season. A 7-inning doubleheader and the extra run rule would be something the players would be in favor of and the owners would not be. The owners would like to go back to traditional doubleheaders where one day they get the gate receipts from 2 tickets. And that's your Armchair Quarterbacks Sports Flash. Stay tuned for the Armchair Quarterbacks radio show and YouTube Live. Please like, subscribe, and share our show today. The Armchair Quarterbacks, your first choice for sports talk, live from the First Coast. The Armchair Quarterbacks on YouTube Live. We're covering the NBA playoffs until we have a winner. Subscribe and like us today. Your first choice for sports talk, live from the First Coast. Good morning. It's time to wake up, y'all. You're listening to the Armchair Quarterback Show. We're here weekdays, 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 Central, the Armchair Quarterback Show. Your first choice for Southern Sports Talk. Good morning. I'm back again. I don't know much, but I know one thing. Thank God that terrible All-Star event crap was is gone now. Now we can focus on the real thing. Fantasy football, baby. Look out. Here we come. It's fantasy football day here on the Armchair Quarterbacks, and I'm going to give you the guide on how to be successful in the playoffs. Well, plus, what the hell is Stephen A. Smith talking about? You're listening to the Armchair Quarterbacks.
I don't want no teenage queen. I don't want no teenage queen. I just want my M14. I just want my
Community Access Channel.
He's the armchair quarterback. He's full of beer and he's full of snacks. The all-American man with a cool in his head. Yeah, the armchair quarterback.
Hey, howdy, hi, top of the morning to you. Welcome to the Armchair Quarterback Radio Show. Mac McGee, and I am going to be breaking down how you win a damn fantasy championship today. Tomorrow, we've got Joey Ariola with us. Justin will be with us on Friday, along with Matt Carr. And if you missed it, I will be posting it later. The replay of Tony Agolini's Gators and Golf. We did that this morning live on YouTube. I believe I forgot to mention it yesterday. It kind of slipped my mind. We did it because the tournament was starting actually late tonight out across the pond, and we wanted to go ahead and get that content in. So you will be able to watch that later if you want to get ready for the Open, which I, for one, am very excited about. Before we get into the fantasy football thing, this half-ass apology by Stephen A. Smith, and look, ESPN thinks that they've done it. Everything's done. We don't have to worry about anything else. Let's go ahead and let's sing Kumbaya, and it's all over. Horse crap. That was a half-ass apology if I ever heard one. And he leaned into, I'm a black man. And the reason why I'm telling you this, we know why you're telling us this, because you're leaning on that crutch because you're afraid of the cancel culture coming after you. So you wanted to underline the fact that you were a minority. You're still someone who went after a guy just because he didn't know the English language, which I stated this yesterday. I'm not going to go into a big thing on it again today. But why was this not a big deal when Acuna Jr. was essentially the face of baseball at the beginning of the year? He was slamming the ball out of the building. Everyone was on the Ronald Acuna train. Every single interview, Ronald Acuna Jr. has an interpreter. So why the hell is it a big deal? Why is it okay for Acuna and not okay for Ohtani? It makes you think there's an underlying some kind of hate or whatnot that Stephen A. has for the Asian community. It's the only thing that can be drawn from if you're going to put A plus B, your conclusion is always C. And that is what I see in the entire thing. And tell me I'm wrong, but there's no way that this was a big deal. Was this a big deal to Stephen A. growing up when Roberto Clemente was the face of Major League Baseball? No. So why the hell is it a big deal now? It really makes you wonder. So anyways, back to the rest of the story, as they say. You've got the NBA playoffs resume tonight, finally. And you're going to get game 3 in Milwaukee. I'm sorry, game 4 in Milwaukee, down 2-1. With that being said, if they win this, it's a tie series with 2 of the next 3 games in Phoenix. I did see that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar came out and said that he believes that Milwaukee's going to win this in 6 now. Look, I'm not saying Milwaukee can't win, but to assume that they're going to win it in 6, that they're going to win 4 consecutive games against the Phoenix Suns, I have a hard time believing that. I think Phoenix is going to come to play tonight. It's going to be a hell of a game, and you're going to need a big-time game once again from Antetokounmpo. Chris Middleton is not going to be the guy that you can ride to win a championship. It's got to be the Greek Freak. And if he can ride that and get them back to even, then game 5 evidently it obviously becomes very, very crucial, because most teams, if the series is tied 2-2, if you win game 5, history's with you. I still think, unless there's a terrible injury, I still think Phoenix is not going to lose on their home court. And so that's why I'm still rolling with the Suns. We'll see what happens. But I do not believe that Batman is going to be Batman for a 3rd game in a row. And I think there's a good chance that Antetokounmpo does not have a great game, as he's been known to disappear in the past. And we'll see what happens. But Chris Paul, I guarantee, is going to be coming ready for it. All right, fantasy football. I told you we were going to do something today that we weren't doing any other day. So if you're missing out, you're missing out. When you go to make your draft, and I got to put my glasses on because some of these things that I have printed off, man, I did not check the font on these suckers. So it is what it is. All right. When you're going into your draft, what everyone always looks at is who's the most talented player, who is the guy who's going to have the breakout season, blah, 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 blah. But one thing that is very rarely looked upon is who are these guys playing? What is their schedule strength? And then the other key factor is, what is their schedule strength going into the playoffs? And I comprise this every year from 3 sources, and I come up with my own ranking, so to speak. But I take into account not only how good a player is, but also how, by the way, they're showing video right now, and I don't know why they're doing this, of them still doing nose swabs going into Denver Bronco headquarters. Are these dude, get a vax already, you freaking thumb. You want that? People are like, I don't want to get a needle. I hate needles, but you want them sticking that in your nose every freaking day? Blech. God, give me 17 jabs before I take one up my nose. That's ridiculous. Okay. But the playoff schedules, people very rarely look at the playoff schedules. They just do. I mean, they look at it once they get into the season, and they get down the road and they go, oh, crap. My best player is going to play the Baltimore Ravens defense, the Redskins defense, and what would be other nightmare in Pittsburgh back to back in the playoffs. If you don't look at those kinds of things, when you hit your draft, you only have you to blame. And this is why, I never like to come out and say that, I am the know-all, be-all when it comes to fantasy football, but I've also been playing it for over 30 years. I've got several championships. I take this seriously, but also have a lot of fun with it. In the way that I have always, I would say for a good 25 years, have developed my draft every year, is I look at your top players and who has the easier path, not just for the playoffs, but I also like to look at overall who has the easier path, right? So what kind of schedule are they going to have all together? And so here is the overall schedule, and then we'll get into position players and how it's going to affect. Now, for the overall schedule, we're talking about the entire season, not just the playoffs. I'm going to get into the playoffs here in a second. But for the overall schedule, the easiest schedule in fantasy football, and you can also look at this if you want to from I'm a fan of my team, because most of these rankings are dealing with how many points you can be expected to score is the short of it. There are some things that don't factor in, that real football is important, but fantasy is not. But all in all, you can kind of look at this as your team. How are they stacked up? The easiest schedule in the entire NFL, as far as fantasy football goes for the entire season, is the Philadelphia Eagles for 2021. Now, the tricky part about that is you've got a quarterback system that we're not 100% sure is going to be as electric as it looked the first couple of weeks, because Hurts and company looked very gettable the last few weeks. But the easiest schedule down the stretch, down the entire season, and I'm talking about up until the final week. I did not factor the final weekend because most leagues do not play that final week of the season. If you're playing the final week of the season in your fantasy league, get the hell out of that fantasy league. Unless it's like a best ball league or something like that, get the hell out of that league because the commissioner doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Or her. Or it. I don't know how your fantasy commissioner identifies. Anyways, the Dallas Cowboys, they're number 2, and this one is interesting because that is a high-powered offense. You've got Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott. You've got the receiving core. They have the second easiest schedule in the entire National Football League. The second easiest is in terms of fantasy. Number 3, and this is why this could be a renaissance year, a reclaiming, so to speak. Number 3 is the Atlanta Falcons and Matty Ice. And considering the fact that he's getting Pitts back, and considering the fact that he is still, I think, I wouldn't say he's in his prime, but I definitely don't think that he's at the end of his career. I still think he's got a few good years left. He still has Ridley. Pitts is being added to the mix. He's got a decent receiving core even without Julio Jones. Now, the sky would be the limit if Julio was still there. But the Atlanta Falcons are number 3. Number 4 is interesting because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the 4th easiest schedule, but it's tricky because Tom Brady, very few years, has been known as a fantasy star. And the older that he's gotten, I think there's going to be more self-preservation. I think there's going to be a lot of running the football. But this encapsulates not just passing, but running the football as well. So overall, the Bucs, and we'll see what their running back system looks like by the time we get to the end of the spring training. But as of right now, you can go heavy on Bucs and probably be okay. Number 5 is the Miami Dolphins. Here's the big caveat with that. What is Tua Tagovailoa going to do this year? Is he going to improve? Is he going to regress? Is he going to stay the same, which is basically a regression because Tua Tagovailoa didn't do a whole hell of a lot as far as fantasy-wise in 2021. They got the W's. Most of those W's were actually guided by Fitzpatrick. So if Fitzpatrick was the quarterback in Miami, I'd be excited. Tua, I'm a little less apt to jump on that wagon, but through the draft or whatnot, they've got a lot of pieces that could be exciting. Here's another team that just doesn't get you going because you're like, God, who's this offense? The Denver Broncos. So we're going to skip past a couple of these teams that don't have an exciting offense and get down to the ones that could be explosive. You have, so the Broncos were 6th, and then you got Carolina and the Giants at 7th and 8th. It does make me wonder if Sam Darnold might have a busting out the gates, because with an easy schedule and with Joe Brady in his ear and Matt Rule, this could be a fun offense to watch this year. You don't think of it that way because it's Carolina, and you think about how big of a dud they've been over the past several years offensively. But that could be a breakout candidate. The Giants, I'm going to have to see it to believe it. But if you're talking about Saquon Barkley, he kind of goes up the ranks for you a little bit, right? Because he's got an easy schedule. The Colts are sitting at number 9 overall, and that's an interesting one. When you look at the Colts being number 9 overall, and you look at some of the weapons they have, both in the receiving core and then, of course, Jonathan Taylor, you would think it's going to be his show to lose this year. The big question is going to be, can they get Carson Wentz back to where he was around 2017, 2018? If they can get him rolling, that's going to be a very interesting offense fantasy-wise for the Indianapolis Colts. And if they start believing in Wentz and start opening up and don't just lean on the defense, which they're going to have a really good defense, but if you have the ability to open it up and lean on that offense, then it won't be such a conservative game plan, and you can see some guys really bust out for the Colts this year in fantasy. Not just Taylor, but also the receiving core. And then once again, you got to keep your eye on Carson Wentz. So if you're talking about the 9th easiest schedule throughout the entire playoffs, that's saying something. Number 10, this will wrap up our top 10, is the Buffalo Bills. Now, as exciting and explosive as that offense was last year, they had the 7th most difficult fantasy schedule. This year, they're going to have the 10th easiest. That tells me Josh Allen ought to be a fantasy stud this year. Again, that it won't be just a flash in the pan. And number 11, before we run to break, when we come out of break, we're going to go into actual positions, and we're going to go into why certain guys are going to go up and certain guys are going to go down come playoff time. But as we go to break, the most interesting ones on this board is that number 11 is the New Orleans Saints. And we know 2 years ago, Jameis Winston, when he was with Tampa, he might have threw a lot of interceptions and they didn't win a lot of games, whatever. We're talking about fantasy football. He would put up some yards, y'all. He would put up some touchdowns. And with Peyton as his coach, you would think he might have learned something sitting behind Peyton and Breeze this past year. 11th easiest schedule. It's set up for Jameis Winston to have a big time, not just him, but you also bring back who I think might be arguably the best receiver in football, Michael Thomas. He's got a chance to shine, but it's all going to come down to what happens under center. If Taysom Hill ends up having to run the show because Jameis Winston doesn't stop turning the ball over, and when it's all said and done, Sean Payton believes that they can win with a Taysom Hill under center. That'll be great if you have the New Orleans Saints defense. That'll be bad if you have Michael Thomas. Because Taysom Hill is not going out and out gunslinging anybody. He's a utility knife. He's a quirky player. He's a solid player that you want on your team if you have him to give you some flexibility in play calling. But you don't want Taysom Hill running the show. Most of it's on his damn legs, and that's going to hurt Michael Thomas. And I think all in all, it would hurt Kamara, because if you start eliminating the passing game, then you just jam the box. All right, let's go ahead and take that quick break, because when we come back, we're going to talk about playoff. We're going to talk about the playoff weeks, the positions, and why certain guys are going to go up the board and certain guys should go down your board. Keep it locked in here to CBS Sports Radio, the Armchair Quarterbacks. We're coming to you live on YouTube, Armchair Quarterbacks. Find us today. Keep it locked in here to CBS Sports Radio on a Wednesday morning, as we're about to hit the second half of Major League Baseball season.
You dumped a porn star? Friendship over. Friendship over!
Are you a gun enthusiast? Love to shop for guns, but are also looking for friendly service? Well, you're in luck. Here in St. Augustine, Top Gun Supply is the friendly gun shop. Staff is very knowledgeable, happy to see you when you walk through the door, and can assist you with all your gun shopping needs. Top Gun Supply stocks a wide range of firearms, such as Ruger, Beretta, 6 Hour, HK, and LWRC. So stop on by at Top Gun Supply at 525 State Road 16 in St. Augustine. Top Gun Supply here in St. Augustine, the friendly gun shop, a proud sponsor of the Armchair Quarterbacks.
Make sure to listen to the Armchair Quarterbacks Drive Time Armchair Quarterbacks Show on Facebook Live, and make sure to tap that app, the Armchair Quarterbacks app. Google Android, Apple iPhone, good enough for us down here in the bayou. Go Tigers and the armchair quarterbacks.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game. Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
Hey, sports fans, football season is here, and it's time to get in on the action. MyBookie.ag has more odds and props than anyone else in the industry. Using MyBookie is simple. Just pick your team, select your odds, and collect your cash. MyBookie.ag has proven to be the most exciting online experience for all sports fans. With the fastest payouts in the industry, there's no other choice than MyBookie.ag. Get in on the action today. Visit MyBookie.ag today.
Make sure to keep it locked in here on Armchair Quarterback Radio. We're not one-trick ponies. We cover the entire NFL, past and present.
3rd down and 6 at the 9. And Bo Jackson to the 20 and out in front. And only one man to beat, and Easley can't run him down. He had the angle, but there goes Bo. And nobody catches Bo. Touchdown. Dion. Back when he started and turns the corner into Giant territory and leave it to Dion to break it open for a touchdown. What a run. Dion comes in as a receiver. Sanders. And they're going his way, but there's double coverage, and somehow Dion is able to beat the coverage. Intercepted by Sanders. Can he score again? Yep. There he goes, Deion Sanders, 71 yards. As for Deion tonight, a 59-yard punt return for a TD, a 55-yard pass reception, a 39-yard punt return, and a 71-yard interception return.
Oh my God, I'm really sorry.
I was in the pool! I was in the pool!
Good morning. Welcome back here to the Armchair Quarterbacks. Sometimes there's a hiccup because of the soundboard. Sometimes there's a hiccup because I'm busy reading the messages back and forth on the YouTube thing. Brian and Steven and company are going to go out to Vegas here. He said 8. I think he said 8 days. Wow, that's going to be dangerous. I mean, that's going to be absolutely, positively dangerous. People who don't know Steven, he starts drinking gasoline at like 6 a.m. if he's not attended to. And I believe there's a part of this trip where the wife where the wives and husbands are going to be separated, and man, just bring a defibrillator or something, because Steven's about to do something incredibly, and record it, because we got to see it. I always hear these stories about how he threw up here and did this and passed out there and all that stuff, but I never get to see it. Record the damn thing this time. We'll make a TikTok. Yes, he is married. For now. That's they're asking about whether or not Steven's married. Yeah, he is for now. We'll see what happens after Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and including your marriage vows sometimes. Okay. Let's go ahead and dive back into the world of fantasy football, because we are now, for all intents and purposes, it's about 6 weeks before you get into the world of the draft. And the drafts this year, a lot of them are going to take place a lot earlier, because you don't have the preseason schedule going as far as it normally does. Normally the preseason schedule, if you remember correctly, it'll end on a Thursday. It's usually the Thursday that college football begins. And that'll give them an entire week before that next Thursday night hits when the this year will be the Bucks, but it's the defending Super Bowl champions are on Thursday Night Football. This year, preseason football is ending for most teams on Saturday. There are a couple of Sunday games. So a lot of teams are going to start drafting on that Saturday and Sunday because you're still not going to put your stars in for week 3 because you don't want a big injury. I think what you're going to have this year is you're going to have, it's going to get a little weird, but it's going to be nice for a football fan. You're not going to have that first game of where hardly anybody plays. I think everyone will play game 1. Now, they may only do a few series like they have in the past, but you won't see as many players take the game off. Tom Brady probably will, but you won't see a lot of the younger stars take it off. It'll be week 2 that they'll put most of the guys through the grind. And then week 3, they might play a little, but not much, because you don't want to risk injury just 2 weeks away from kickoff. And it's essentially ending when the preseason is essentially ending when most preseasons end in everyone's head in years past, meaning week 3, after week 3, no one plays in week 4. That Thursday night game, week 4, where the entire league's playing, it's your scrubs, and it's guys trying to fight for a roster spot. So it's still essentially going to end at the same time, but now physically there's going to be no week 4. So with all that being said, your drafts are probably going to start in around 6 weeks, between 6 and 7 weeks from now, which means you got to start getting into the mock draft rooms. You got to force yourself to do it, because it's hard to do it when it's still July. You're like, what am I doing? But all the camps are starting to open up. Most of them will be full bore by this time next week. So the camps will be opening up. That means the chatter will be opening up. It'll be opening up about where guys are going to be positioned in every backfield. That's usually the big one. And then, of course, the receivers. Your quarterbacks are usually set across the board. It's the skill positions that everyone gets focused in on, primarily wide receiver and running back, because tight end is usually a crapshoot. And if you read a bunch of junk on tight ends over the next 6 weeks, you're going to drive yourself insane. That's going to be one of those things. I've got to see it on the field. So let me see what week 2 looks like in the preseason, and you'll find out who the tight end mostly will be. The ones with a strong track record, like the Travis Kelce's, you don't have to worry about those guys. It's the other ones. It's going to be things like, who's going to be the guy that steps up in New England? Or is it going to have such a big split that both of them will be essentially worthless? Or are they going to throw to the tight end so much that they'll both actually be viable options? There was a small time frame where Gronk and Aaron Hernandez, before Aaron Hernandez went all Aaron Hernandez about it, and there was a small time frame there where having Gronk or Hernandez, you could realistically have either one, and they did very well. It was about a 2-year span in the world of fantasy football. Okay. These are the playoff weeks, and these are the weeks 15, 16, and 17. When I say playoff weeks, your typical league is 15, 16, and 17 if there's 3 weeks. If there's only 2 weeks, then obviously it's 16 and 17. But I comprise mine for the 3 weeks because it's more common to have a 3-week playoff than it is anything else. Okay. So with that being said, here's the big surprise. They're number 1, and this is when I have these rankings, I mean easiest. Okay. They're number 1 at quarterback. They're number 1. They're number 1 quarterback, number 3 at running back. And then they're about halfway down at wide receiver. Now, one of the reasons why the wide receiver gets a little skewed is because they don't have the greatest wide receiving core. But the San Francisco 49ers are looking like they could be the team that surprises everyone offensively this year. They really could. They could be the team that surprises everyone and puts up big numbers. But the question that no one really knows is who's the quarterback going to be by the time we get to this week 15, week 16, week 17. If the Niners are playing well and they're winning, they're not going to bench Garoppolo. It doesn't matter how good Trey Lance appears to be, they're not going to rock that boat. But if the 49ers are out there crapping the bed and they're struggling around, they're 3-5 or whatnot halfway through the season, they're going to make a change to Trey Lance to try to rejuvenate the offense. And if he is anything like they think he's going to be, can you imagine having Trey Lance as your fantasy quarterback going into week 15, 16, 17? He's got the easiest road. The easiest road. The number 2 team that's going to surprise a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, is the Detroit Lions. They've got a super easy road. And I know it's Goff and it's not Stafford, but that actually might be a good thing because I think they're going to play a very conservative style of offense, but one that will lead to good things for Goff because he was the king of the play action pass. And you're going to expect him to be able to do well off the play action pass, assuming that DeAndre Swift and company can do well in the running game. So that's another guy to keep an eye on. And then we'll finish it off with the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 3. I won't go through the entire litany because it's just, it's too much. We don't have enough time. With the running backs, the rankings go like this. The Chargers, these are the easiest. The Chargers, the Jaguars, the 49ers, like we just said, Arizona, and Denver. Denver's interesting because you don't know what to make of their running game. But it's interesting to keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to do a complete podcast before the, or vodcast, I guess you would call it, before the season starts, and we're going to break this down because I simply don't have enough time. But the running backs, you're looking at guys, number 6 is Chicago. That's interesting because Montgomery was very good down the stretch last year. Atlanta, Houston, and Indianapolis and Cleveland round out the top 10. Wide receivers. Once again, San Francisco. I had said they were definitely down the list. I was looking at the wrong position. San Francisco's number 1 at wide receiver. Arizona's 2. Detroit 3. Other teams of interest, the Dolphins are 8. Brian, it looks like, I know you're watching, it looks like that Cincinnati has actually got a rough road those weeks 15, 16, 17. Because they are down in the, I have them color coded. So I got the green means go, yellow means be cautious, which is 11 through 20. And then if you're 21 through the rest, 21 through 32, you're I put it to pink down to red, right? And they are in the pink and red in the entire, in all these rankings. The running back is not quite as bad. They're about midway. They're about 19th. But that's interesting because I do believe that Burrow could have a really good season coming off that injury, and he was looking good. But if he's going to have a tough schedule down the stretch in the playoffs, that's going to make you a little leery. Now, here's the thing about all these. One thing you have to take it with a grain of salt with this is the way the defenses were last year, and it's also a combination of how they are projected to be this year. But we know every single year there's at least 1 or 2 defenses that come out of nowhere and play much better football than everyone expected to, like Washington last year. And it can upset the apple cart. But I have to go off of what's expected and what we saw, because you can't, if you get into, well, I really think, the secondary of the Jets is really going to turn around. You start getting into that, you're not going to have any kind of game plan going into the season. So with all this being said, I kind of laid it out with the tight ends, by the way, is Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, Miami, Jacksonville, and San Fran are the top 5. With all that being said, these are the rankings that I've come up with for the playoffs only. But these are the positions, the players that are going to have the best stretch down the fantasy baseball playoffs, or fantasy football playoffs, excuse me. Your quarterbacks, when you do the entire schedule and you factor in the playoffs, Dak Prescott now becomes the number 1 quarterback to have in fantasy football this year, if you buy into any of these rankings. Number 2 is Matty Ice. And I'm not saying you draft these guys over Pat Mahomes. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is down the stretch, they're going to have the easiest paths. For example, if you're wondering about Kansas City, they have the 26th most difficult schedule down the stretch for quarterbacks in fantasy football. Now, we all know Patrick Mahomes is phenomenal, and he should have another good year. But that can make a difference. It really can. It can make a huge difference. I'm going to go ahead and pull up his schedule as an example. And we will be doing more of these, like I said, as the season comes up. I'm planning on doing these more in a breakdown because there's just not enough time on these morning shows to get all this in. And then the little 40 minutes that we do on Saturday with Sean and Steven, there's just not enough time. But we are going to do, it'll be called The Handicappers because that is the name of the new show that is going to be. It used to be Stardom Situm on Sundays. Well, we're doing The Handicappers now with the whole crew, Joey and Sean and Steven. It looks like Tones and got a couple other guys that are interested. It's going to be a 2-hour kickoff show. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk mainly fantasy and points against the spread. And then we will dive into some AFC South and NFC South matchups of the day, that kind of stuff, get teams of interest. Basically, if you care about the National Football League south of the border or you're in the Midwest, you're going to want to watch this show. All right. With all that being said, and for those of y'all who don't know, we have a 60%, over 60% win rate over the last 5 years against the spread. That's unheard of. Last year, it was ridiculous. It was like 66.4 or something like that percent. It was ridiculous. So we're going to do, and we're going to do what we always do. We hold ourselves accountable. We do our picks, and it is what it is. And you hope that you have a good season. We've done pretty well. It's surprised me how well we've done over the last several years. I keep waiting for that year. Oh God, we've won like 10%. This is just terrible. But so far, so good. When you look at what the Kansas City Chiefs are going to play that first weekend of the playoffs, it's going to be the Denver Broncos. Now they're at home, but that is a very good defense in Denver. They're getting Von Miller back. So it's one of the reasons why these rankings are where they are. Okay. It's it takes a lot for me to say, man, I'd be careful if I had Patrick Mahomes. Well, I would be careful if I had Patrick Mahomes down the stretch because I'd be a little leery of my number. If you draft Patrick Mahomes, you're going to draft him very early in the season. I think I had the wrong season here. Yes, something's wrong. Oh, I had the wrong week. I'm sorry. All right. Week 15 is actually the Chargers. They're going to be at the Chargers. That's not terrible. But week 16 this year, he's going to play the Steelers. That's tough against that Steelers defense. And then week 17 that we have here is at the Bengals. And some of these rankings that they've come up with that I've comprised with also factor in the fact that, yes, the Bengals are going to be a little better, but then again, it's going to be January 2nd in Cincinnati. What's the weather going to be like? That could be a huge factor. And if you factor in, if you do play that final week, they're at Denver. So that's what I was referring to with the Chiefs. So we don't have time to get into all of this today, but the rankings look like this. Your best bet down the stretch. Dak number 1 at quarterback. Matty Ice number 2. Tom Brady number 3. Josh Allen number 4. And when you look at Josh Allen number 4, the first thing that I'm thinking of is he kind of vaults up to the top to me. If he's got the 4th easiest, and we know how electric he was last year, he makes a huge jump. Here's the two guys that have slid in the top 6 you wouldn't expect, but these are the easiest routes in the playoffs. Jameis Winston and Sam Darnold. Now, once again, this is not saying you would draft them over if Mahomes is sitting there at number, was it 3rd round, 4th round that he normally goes? Some people are drafting him in the 2nd round. Not saying you're going to draft Jameis Winston or Sam Darnold over him. What I'm saying is if they're available, you stash them as your backup quarterback. Because down the stretch, if something happens to someone, even if you have an elite quarterback, you might just like the matchup better that day, or he might get hurt. As far as the playoffs go, across the board, other guys, quarterbacks to keep an eye on, obviously the San Francisco, Jimmy G and Trey Lance. That's kind of a crapshoot, and I don't know what to tell you about that because we just really don't know what to expect from Trey Lance this year. But Goff, Big Ben, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, Matty Ice, all these guys have much easier roads than what your usual suspects do. When you think quarterback fantasy, the first thing pops in your head is Mahomes, and then it's probably like Lamar Jackson, and then the list goes on and on. Running backs. Your first running back that's going to pop in your mind is going to be CMC. What about his injury? You're going to think about Derrick Henry. Is he going to continue to carry the load that he has in the past when you're going to have all these weapons at wide receiver? Running back, this is how it plays out in the playoffs. Zeke pops to the top of the board. Raheem Mostert, James Robinson, or if you think ETN's going to be the guy to have in Jacksonville, I do not. I think he's going to be more of a weapon they're going to use, but I don't think he's going to be a weapon that they lean on. I think James Robinson is going to be the between the tackles guy. As good as ETN was in college, I just feel like ETN may not get the touches that Robinson will get. David Montgomery, number 4. Davis from the Falcons at number 5. And Jonathan Taylor, number 6. Other guys that are in the top 10, Chubb, Carson, and Akers. So you've got to take this into consideration when you're making your draft. We're not saying take Chris Carson over, Eckler or even better. You're not saying take Chris Carson over Derrick Henry. But what you are saying is, as you kind of weed through the draft and as it goes, you still want to take your elite players at the top. But as players fall, you might want to jump on a Carson down the road. Because if he can be healthy, he's going to be the cornerstone of that backfield, and they have a favorable matchup down the stretch. Same thing with Cam Akers. Wide receivers. Arizona jumps out at the list. We know they're going to put the ball in the air. The Jets, with all the additions that they made, they're number 2. They're ranked number 2 overall. It means in a deep dive on your bench, you might take a chance on a Keelan Cole. that you normally wouldn't have done when he was in Jacksonville. Number 3, the Las Vegas Raiders. And we know Chucky's going to put the ball up. Number 4, the Saints come marching in again. Miami 5th, Pittsburgh 6th. Will Ben Roethlisberger be able to be there down the stretch, or total disaster if it ends up being Dwayne Haskins, right? Cleveland, Buffalo, and San Francisco are all in the top 10. And then as far as tight ends go, we know you're not gonna overlook Waller. You're not gonna overlook Kelsey. But Kittle's number 2 in down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs. So would you possibly be willing to lean him a little more than you would Waller or Kelsey? It's because Kittle has been very, very good, outstanding, and he's got a favorable matchup now. But the guys of interest, the easiest one down the stretch is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I'm not going to tell you to draft Gronk. But will some of their other guys be able to step? Because I still think they're going to save Gronk for the playoffs. They're going to get him involved, but as far as getting him banged around, Gronk is there to win Super Bowls. And then the other one, as far as tight ends go, that's interesting. Number 3 on the list is Gesicki of Miami. Does he have a competent quarterback leading him into the playoffs? Into the fantasy football playoffs? Or are we going to have another disastrous year for Tua? The jury is still out on that. Number 4 is the New England Patriots, but who's it going to be? Will it be Jonnu Smith? And the Giants sitting at number 5, but I've been burned by that guy so many times I can't even endorse it. But they are the 5th easiest. They're the 5th easiest. Defenses, here's an interesting thing on defenses before we have to jam out of here. Washington, Rams, Chicago, Philly, Tampa Bay, and then the one that I'll put an asterisk by is Detroit. With their new head coach, who's going to be a defensive guy, he's added a lot to his defense, and they're going to have a tougher mentality, I believe. And the 6th easiest playoff schedule, will the Detroit Lions be finally a defense you may want in 2021? Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds strange, and I can't sit here and tell you with a straight face that I'm going to go all in on the Detroit Lions. But, man, I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm thinking about it. I may not even draft them, but there might be a team that I'm looking at down the stretch, seeing how they're playing. And if their defense does look good, these aren't necessarily teams and players that you're going to draft, but you've got to keep this in mind during the season of, all right, things didn't go the way I thought it would for player X. Well, what the hell did McGee say about the damn schedule? You'll be able to go back to the videos and look at it. We will start doing those in August. I'll probably be putting them on Saturday mornings and doing content, basically one position per video, because you just run out of time. You don't have enough time to get into why certain players should be ranked certain spots. But that's what you can look forward to on Saturdays in August, as I'm planning on doing some more fantasy football content, because we didn't really do it last year, but it was pretty popular and people seem to ask about it this year. I got several DMs this year asking about the fantasy football and if we're going to do what we did a couple of years ago. So we're going to do that, but it's just going to be on YouTube as opposed to podcast form. Okay, let's go ahead and turn back time. Get the hell on out of here. We got a pretty good turn back time because I found this one. It's a riot. All right, the first one is not as much. The first one on this year, 21 years ago, John Olerud has a game-tying double disallowed in the top of the 6th inning when first base umpire Jim Wolf had called time before the pitch because a baseball came out into the fair territory from the visitors' bullpen. The Mariners' first baseman disappointment is short-lived after he hits Brian Meadows' 1-0 pitch for a 3-run homer, giving Seattle a 4-2 lead that they eventually win the game. Can you imagine that being just pissed? What do you mean you called timeout? This is ridiculous. This is absurd. Asinine. Never mind, dude. We're good. I hit home run instead. The other one, this is the one that cracked me up. On this date in 1974, Billy Martin, we all know the famous Billy Martin, right? If you haven't, you need to watch the ESPN miniseries, The Bronx is Burning. It kind of gives it in a capsule. On this date in 1974, Billy Martin becomes the first American League manager to get ejected by the umpires from 2 games in one day. They had a doubleheader. He got ejected in both of the damn games. That's the Billy Martin that I know and love. Birthdays.
It's your birthday today.
All right, dead guy. Born on this date, A.B. Happy Chandler. What a cool name. American politician and baseball commissioner. He was one of the first baseball commissioners. He passed away in 1991, so 30 years ago today he passed away. And a live guy. This is one of my favorite broadcasters of all time. I really, really wish that he was still in the Cubs booth. We talked about this last Saturday. Happy 74th? Happy 74th birthday to Mr. Steve Stone. It's funny because of all the years of watching him with Harry Carey. In my mind, Steve Stone will always be about 40 years old because I haven't seen him much on the White Sox. I'll hear him, but I don't see him much. So I really don't know what Steve Stone looks like to this day, because I'll flip around, and if I hear that Steve Stone's doing the game, I'll listen for an inning or so and then move on. But Steve Stone, 74, one of my favorite broadcasts for all. He was so good with Harry Carey. It was so good. He is very underrated as how good Steve Stone was. When Harry Carey would get up there and bloviate and drunk out of his mind on Budweiser beer, and by the 6th inning, Harry Carey would be hammered. Steve Stone was so good at navigating the waters and getting them to the end of the game. I mean, I think one of the most underrated broadcasters in the history of sport. As fun and as entertaining Harry Carey was for us to watch, it had to have been a real pain in the ass to work with him because you don't know what you're going to work with every day. Happy birthday, Steve Stone. You'll obviously have the day off, and then the White Sox, who's your current employer, I really think they've got a hell of a chance to make a deep run in October and should be a lot of fun. All right, we're going to get out of here tomorrow. Joey's going to be with us. It is Green Bay Packer Day tomorrow. Green Bay Packers is who we dive into and should have a lot of fun with that. We're doing the Saints on Friday with Justin Waller. And we got a lot more in store, including when Matt Carr joins us on Friday, NBA rumor mill on the trade deadline, or on the offseason trades really starting to kick up, and we're going to dive into that along with it looks like we will have a game 5, so we'll dive into a game 5 as well. We will see you mañana. Have a great day, and keep it between the ditches.
Goodbye, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. We're back tomorrow with another show. Well, unless we're fired, we'll talk to you then. Goodbye, sweetheart. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Guys and gals, it's time to go. We'll see you on the next show.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Thanks for listening to the Armchair Quarterbacks on these CBS Sports affiliates and catching the show on YouTube Live. We're here weekdays Find Armchair Quarterbacks on YouTube Live today. Please subscribe and share and take us everywhere you go. The Armchair Quarterbacks, your first choice for Southern sports talk, live from the First Coast.
Gonna get another cigarette, please. Can I get